Chile here with Sirius Talisman. This is Mercury Hour, and this is Venus Night. Ascendant 4 degrees Taurus, ruled by Venus, Venus in 3 degrees Virgo, and we have a midheaven 22 degrees Capricorn. Moon is in Libra, in the 6th house, ruled by Venus in the 5th, and the Mercury 7 degrees Libra. Now, several things came to me, and as I'm publishing a video, first of all, the fact that, and this is a big honoring of Trifon from Trifon Astrology, and I always love Trifon because he's one of the people if the mundane astrology looks like, a green painting, he would paint that green painting without any adjusting the hues. And while that might not be the cup of tea of every solar astrology fan, it does gives a certain prediction and accuracy that if it's good, it's good. If it's not good, it's not good. If it's way more not good and good, it's going to tell it like it is. And the astrology right now is looking like those times that any other person would look at as, well, the same pandemic that killed the aristocracy as the Spanish flu, juxtaposed with the falling of Atlantis, juxtaposed, okay, um, with all those many things that don't look the best. However, it sparks an opportunity with Pluto out of bounds that we hadn't had, and conjoining suddenly in 12 millennia. And so I was talking about outer planets, and I was talking about the 9th house. And what came about was that thing that many people look at as intergenerational wealth. And this is a great time to talk about it, as Saturn Neptune meet. Putin confiscates oligarch wealth, particularly on the basis of Satanism and LGBTQ. And whatever we think about this move, I was watching this beautiful video by The Luxury Lane about branding in intergenerational wealth, what people call old money. And the thoughts that come to my mind is, when we look at the wealth family, when we look at the legacy that stands the test of time, we're basically looking at the outer planets, and the wealth seems to be moving from Pluto to Neptune. And Pluto's merit is the ability to control, maneuver, and Neptune is downright having to surrender the outcome. For example, something that exposes the Rockefellers' wealth and the wealth consolidation with Rothschild is testimony of Anneke Lucas, a very astute, very representative, very compatible with the aesthetics of the crowd woman that as a child was trained a certain way that would assist in wealth consolidation. And in the beginning, she was supposed to be murdered in rituals. And it was one of the scenes that Anneke Lucas describes, and I really, really recommend listening to her. She makes completely inaccessible content very, very accessible. And it's very important for everyone. One of the scenes that she describes was as she was about to be removed, or because she was rebelling as a child, she was about to be punished. But Rockefeller had a spiritual experience that said no. Eventually, Anneke Lucas would be smuggled out of what we would in nowadays modernity times talk about as child trafficking rings. If you go only 500 years backwards, which would be between a Neptune and an Aries cycle backwards, nobody would talk about that. There was a while where the Medicis, around the time of Leonardo da Vinci, had a struggle and took down certain dynasties to do with accusation of pedophilia and gay relations. However, then pedophilia becomes extremely normalized in the public discourse, and only in the less than 100 years do we talk about this taboo of taboos. So any wealth family practice could not have even conceived this level of analysis that I'm describing now. In fact, when the Rockefellers faced scrutiny, it was about monopolism at the aftermath of civil wars and abolishing of slavery in certain territories. And what they did, they moved, actually very smart move, they went from the Pluto to the Neptune by providing charity. And now when we have voices that completely change the trajectory of humanity, wealth families are called to adapt. I actually saw a post on the Rothschild family, and the Rothschild family is very attuned. And that post was on Kate de Rothschild. She was born in 1949, and the way that Kate de Rothschild dealt with basically the loss of her father and the separation from her spouse, turning into the arts. And this is something that is very attuned to a time where a lot more openness about marital issues, dealing with an emotional crisis, is something that is very modern and normalized to have in the open, and is considered relatable. Now, one of the things that I have been emphasizing is that the Rothschilds removed the women, okay, the beginning, they removed the women from position of power and wealth equity. So here we have this awareness, attunement, the times are changing, there is the calling, okay, to change the wealth consolidation practices, and the legacy management is doing the adaptation, which is showing how when we, the people at this day and age, speak up with respect and honor to the spirit of the time, to the trajectory that the wealth families went through from being completely secluded to having to be cautious about not to put other people, groups, and lineages in the conditions that created the Rothschild. Okay. Um, and so it completely changes everything we know about what is now called old money. Oligarchies having their wealth confiscated on the basis of Satanism. Again, an attunement process by Putin's regime to the voices that call to abolish satanic abuse and redistribute the wealth. Now, I don't know what will be with that, and every move is, of course, a power move, um, and it won't always sit one in one with the intentions. That being said, the adaptability to the spirit of the times is always a part of the legacy management of any wealth family. In this pivotal time of Pluto out of bounds, the bisextile Uranus Sedna, there are various streams that I see, and at the time of changing wealth, the reason we see a lot of old money practices, old money, because there's a lot of new money, a lot of wealth transfer, a lot of people, we had parts of the royal family in United Kingdom um, separating. So there is an acute awareness that the times are changing. And we can think about the family or the wealth family as a mini world. Who is included? Who is excluded? How do we treat uh, um, people that don't match up with what we would predict? Um, how do we deal when suddenly there is a big, gigantic calling of more than one person to something that is so taboo and was so normalized? Okay, that wealth consolidation practice, pretty much, if you go to, let's say, Asia, and you have a street food counter, okay, it would be normal to take a living animal, dump it into the water, and then cook it and present it as a snack. And naturally, the person that would spend 7, 8, 9 hour shift doing that would need to be desensitized to the very transition of life to death, yet educated about the spiritual practice behind that simple, what looks like a street counter. Old wealth families began somehow like this, even if they were cloned. And that entire dedication is brick by brick by brick by brick by brick dissolving into a domino effect at this time, because everything that we considered set in stone is being rejuvenated. So, one of the things that are going to be of much concern in building wealth that is intergenerational is trying to predict what would be the changes of values across time and adapt accordingly, while not sacrificing one's personal value at a given time and allowing a space to explore, trendset, and transform one's own value. Think about an interaction. A new generation person discusses topics about wealth channels, legacy. A person that is presenting themselves as a legacy manager of a wealth family contacts them on social media. That new person, having been confronted with attempts and trafficking campaigns, is afraid, but is this real? Not real? Who am I talking to? Do I even have the safety around me to talk? And and so think about even the attempt to create a bridging between two worlds being met with tremendous anxiety. The generational gap is not just a generational gap, class gap, um, but also even a cosmology gap, spiritual gap. But something that is almost communicating with something that comes from almost another planet. Thinking, how do we establish that we both come in peace? Very likely we both completely terrify one another. Very likely both of us have manifested in those changing times adaptability, needed transformation, maintaining of a legacy, predicting trends in the world, being a point of influence. Very likely both of us have been exposed to really dark things, each in their own perception, okay? There are some people that when they hear a woman singing, they believe they're going to be possessed by a demon. And so, and yet, it's very obvious that that adaptability requires certain sort of certain sort of communication. It's very obvious that not having that communication in some one way or another can be sending swirls of interpretation that are not necessarily true. And it's also um, very obvious that the opportunities to rejuvenate wealth practices and legacy practices in a way that is attuned with the spirit of the times, even on the spiritual practice level. Okay, just think about the opportunity that wealth consolidation will not necessitate practices that are energetically wealth blocks. Knowing that in the past, it was a very Plutonian, but not an out of bounds Pluto. So monopolizing, um, being supposedly power hungry, was very compatible with the age of oil and gas. Something that is dug into the soil, requires infrastructure. Whoever controls the infrastructure controls the wealth of dynasties. If I think about the Rockefeller having to energetically attune with dynasties and their wealth consolidation practices, communicate, and to basically regulate. Okay, we cry about the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, but before that we had an age of empires that were definitely had there was a power to the banking system, but it was way more difficult to regulate dynasties, which is a potency of the Rockefellers. And then we came a new trouble. Okay, just like industrial age, a lot of problems solved, new problems. Okay, now we're dealing with globalism, and basically that's a 500-year question. Only in modern times. I mean, of course, 300 years ago, we were dealing with practically the same issues. 3,000. And now, as the energy changes, we cannot, there's only so much that can be held back. And it requires an entire spiritual practice of wealth that each family needs to bring from their own outer planets. Some with the fixed stars, yes, and yet the level of analysis is outer planets. How and predicting how will we do the fixed stars in 1,000 years? Which is why fixed stars are so useful for wealth and legacy. Think about the problems of today. blood libels slash blood rituals, we can no longer say blood libels for the actual living, breathing people, and people, it's enough that the person was attacked by voodoo. And that voodoo came from an MK often of a Western government. Now, for that person, this is enough to question everything. But the opportunity is, hey, any such practices are wealth blocks. He was very right, perhaps, for time of Pluto. Not right morally. Right in terms of power. Because the frequencies of the dynasties were having those very weird rituals. And the one that has to regulate them, to control them, has to be in frequency level that attunes to them, but is able to manage them. Pluto out of bounds in these coming 10 years is unable to do that. And that's exciting. Now, when an outer planet goes over a fixed star, for example, Uranus going over Beta Persei every 84 years, that's currency change, currency wars. The other elections, this is one of them. Sedna every 12 millennia. So first of all, COVID was in once in 12 millennia. Okay? There are other pandemics, there are other things. COVID was once in 12 millennia. Now Uranus is controlling Sedna once in 84 years. But Sedna in Gemini, first time in 12 millennia. So think about the fact that the topic of transhumanism is actually a lived reality. Good thing, bad thing, who knows? Even in the test of several, Uranus going through Taurus, 2018, 2025. I think none of us has entered this transit and is coming out with the exact same values, pronounced it the exact same way. Now think old money, trying to predict values that stand the test of time for generations, something like the change of the rituals that are done around currency and wealth consolidations in dynasties showing up as a problem is unprecedented. Those things are usually, first of all, so secret, so isolated, so secluded. so well kept, um, but also so embedded into the psyche. And when something like this comes out, it's not just out there, it's every single person within the family that had gone through, one way or another, certain type of such rituals, with all that that entails as an infant, as a child. And so try to predict what would be the things to remediate in the coming at least millennia. Two cycles of Neptune, around 3.5 cycles of Pluto, around 2 cycles of Aries, can be half a zodiac, can be half a sign of Sedna. Sedna will only be in Gemini for 40 years. In Sagittarius, she was for 1,000 years, she was for a millennia. New planets and completely new ways to do astrology. Understanding history in completely new eyes. This is a task that is incredibly intellectually challenging, and for me, I'm just thinking with you. Think about people that are new money. One of the things that I ran into, people that are new money, dining with people that are old money, and then coming to their parents and saying, like, shout out to Albina from the privileged view, saying, well, father, you have a lot of money because you worked hard. And the family is from Dagestan. So he shut her down elegantly. He said, yes, but my father, he worked so hard. And absolutely nothing, nothing close to that level of wealth. And mind you, this is a family where people ask her if she's in the Skulls and Bones. So you think just one generation, less than generation, the same generation, dining with old money, everybody believes that we worked hard, so we have the wealth. It is also a very protective belief. It protects us from understanding the changing spirit of the time, because we want to believe that we do tend to something or work hard. Okay, and I'm not talking about values here. Work hard, we do that and that and that leads to money. We do that, we get money. And people want to believe they will always be able to make money because they learn how to make money. because you learn it as skill. It's not wrong thinking. But it is so protective from the belief that, hey, right now maybe there's, for example, pandemic. The Spanish flu killed the entire aristocracy. Why did it kill the entire aristocracy? Because basically the people that were working with the soil, they had better immunity, and they would have to work. So think about, as aromatherapist, we know thieves' vinegar. And thieves' vinegar was basically what the thieves used when they had to break into an apartment during a pandemic and try to steal stuff. Okay, they were not high society, but the high society no longer was in that much touch with the soil. The immunity declined. Okay, preserving the family heritage, which can also decline gene because there's less biodiversity, even if they marry within aristocracy and another family. Okay, think about the golden retriever. Okay, it's always a retriever and a golden. They're always going to be mixed with another retriever, but they will always have the inflammation related, nervous system related, endocrine system related issues that a person knows. It's an amazing brand, it's an amazing dog, amazing breed, but they're gonna need to see the vet quite often, even as preventative. So when a pandemic arises, they die like flies. Who takes over the land in feudalist systems? The people that were working the land. Trifon predicted such a thing for Europe is going to be affecting the world globally. We're not talking COVID here. COVID was military operation. We're talking pandemic. Okay, there was a difference between Saturn, Jupiter, and Neptune. Lung-related power issue of the nervous system and the skull and bones, because it was the decan of Chiron, the decan of Capricorn, Bilderberg and Wilson. And Saturn-Neptune conjunction, with Saturn ruling over out of bounds Pluto. So nervous system, inflammation. Think about it is exactly, if you think Spanish flu, it is Vulcan, get your vinegar oil. Get your teeth vinegar. It doesn't mean there's not going to be medical warfare. But this one, they won't be able to control the results. Pluto is controlled. Neptune, one cannot control the results. And it's global. And so, you think how just with one generation, a couple of meals and mingling can draw one away from their own wisdom of the lineage that they had before coming to the age of wealth. And the adaptability. And for me to watch this, it was so humbling because this is something that can happen to any family that is coming to wealth. And then I remember something that astrological magician Christopher Warnock said. A leaf is is well hid, the best in the forest. And it was about actually a stealth wealth talisman that he made. This is very much in alignment with Pluto after a decade of being out of bounds. At the end of the second decade, towards the end of the second decade in Aquarius, will reach Deneb Algedi, which is a planet of wealth redistribution. So when we are thinking, and Saturn Neptune is on a world degree, when we are thinking money, legacy, wealth, we're not thinking even in terms of power and charity. We are thinking to set our tiny leaf to be a leaf in the forest in 20 years. And hone in on the 2026 0-degree Saturn-Neptune conjunction to plant the seed that ripens, and in just 20 years, very possible, Sahara is being reforested in less time by digging up half moons. So, planting the seed in such a way that our family's wealth would be that leaf that is best well hid in the forest, is the power of the legacy building of once in 12 millennia that we have to completely change the world. Completely different from how wealth has been done just 50 years ago. In the age of air, moving into 300 years that are passage through an era of air, which is a couple of millennia, the age of Aquarius, what we can't rely on is things not being transparent. Our thoughts, the astral activity is being read by, because if I'm in my room, another person who is a watcher can think a thought, and my screensaver will capture that thought in picture. It's at the palm of each and every one's hand because our cell phones are. So what we can't rely on is privacy. And this is what Stealth World used to rely upon. This is why Christopher Warnock's Stealth World talisman is so brilliant. Because it forces us to think not as the well of fresh water that we keep secret from everyone that is our lineage, our family, our own, into they're gonna know. Everybody knows about the bunkers in Albania. Albania is actually famous for them. NATO, 12th house Leo, Pluto in Leo. Pluto in the 12th house. Monarchy, royalty, A-bombs. But the A-bomb is with a hidden enemy. Russia has nuclear plantation in dollars in Turkey. Russia is not a NATO ally, officially. Now, the important thing is that if we identify the full transparency as removal of world blocks, you know what is like the energy of keeping a secret, the energy of keeping us safe. One of the reasons I'm not billionaire is not because of lack of motivation. It's because, I'm not joking, I would have to safeguard my money so much that I would not get to enjoy it. Even if I didn't know about the wealth consolidation practices, there is a safe, there is a code to the safe. The safe has to be in a bank. That means that tomorrow the bank is say, what money? Swiss Bank did that. There is a government. If my accountants make a mistake, I can find myself in jail. Maybe together with the accountant, but probably they're not going to jail instead of me. And if they are, I might get assassinated. Accountants one-on-one. Um, so the bureaucracy level needs to be simplified. Then there is tax evasion. Tax evasion, what money? Alternatively, here are the CEOs of banks that have an account in Switzerland. They did that to various oligarchs in Israel, including female CEO of Leumi Bank just a couple of years ago, Swiss Bank. Do not think that Pluto is that which is hidden and stays hidden. Astrology advice. We just had a couple of years ago, we had the coronation where it looked like the best of astrologers gave the worst of advice. If my astrologer is threatened, they can't give me a good reading. If my astrologer is safe, they might not feel obligated to me. In the past, one would say, okay, it's a fine tuning. Pluto out of bounds, there's nothing fine tuning about Pluto out of bounds. It's just 10 years, and you think about it, this is a 10 years that come once in 3,000 years that can change an entire millennia. And we haven't even touched on Sedna. But then let's say we want our leaf to be well hidden in a forest. How do we bring abundance and value and communicate this value to each and every person in the world, in each and every language, each and every culture, each and every belief system, when that's not even the challenge with Google Translate. I spoke with people that did not speak not only my language, but none of my languages, and they just used the Google Translate. It's the fact that a part of the world practices is about challenging our own beliefs, habits, heritage, heritage, heritage. In Chinese, traditional Chinese medicine, the pancreas is associated with the diseases that people considered hereditary. And there is a joke running about people globally when they learn Chinese medicine, even related affiliated material. And this is that when it comes to pancreas-related disease, the patient will usually say, yes, it is hereditary. And then they would begin to question them. Yes, I was drinking alcohol. Yes, a father also drinking alcohol. Yes, a grandfather also drinking alcohol. Okay, it's hereditary. Now, heritage, to challenge a heritage, to cure a disease, talk about the pandemic, is very challenging. And is necessary. The people that are going to challenge our heritage the most are people that have people in the family or outside that have Aries placements. Moon, Aries hard aspects are going to challenge the fundamentals of our legacy. It's the people that we normally wouldn't invite to they don't have the etiquette, they don't have. And not only that, they're not willing to learn. What's stopping them? They're busy developing something that society will take sometimes 500 years to understand. And the various ways in science, Karl Popper talked about being able to refute a theory. Come on, do you really think that the people that are building the next vehicles that are going to take us to space and the houses that they're going to have to take with these vehicles, do you really think they have time to wait for Karl Popper? No, they have hands in experience that sometimes falls completely flat. By a couple of billionaires meeting the passengers of the Titanic when Saturn began its journey in Pisces. But definitely what they don't have is the time to wait for Karl Popper. We have right now already 10 years of Pluto out of bounds. Do you really think we're going to finish them with the same Karl Popper? Maybe yes, maybe no. We can offer an experiment that would test our hypothesis, as Einstein did. Does it apply when there is a prophecy, a premonition? Usually not, only in the aftermath. Same with astrology. I said, there's going to be, my colleague says something like Pearl Harbor, and I said, even if they do some things, they're going to have to surrender the results. In the aftermath of the eclipse, and it is too early to say, of course, there was one complete hacking into entire airport system in Europe, one attempt to do a megalithic event in airport in Dublin, and the taxi strike in airport in Israel. No 9/11, but it was an almost 9/11, which I said they're going to have to surrender the results. So I'm going to leave this episode at this point of thought to contemplate about all the many things, the associative thinking, and how tending to that which is completely removed from tradition as the potency to build a legacy that exceeds what we know of in tradition that builds intergenerational wealth. In the age of air, building a wealthy world is, and one of the values that I bring to the table is sexual sovereignty in spirit and in matter, which is the most immense intelligence challenge that people face as countries, as families, being resolved. It's resolved with resources, but it brings resources. And creation of a wealthy world is not top-down, nor is it only emergence. It's a combination. The challenges are there, which is why there's some spiritual teachers talk even about the splitting of a timeline. Those that want to cure the hereditary pancreas, and those that said it's hereditary, and then go drink the same amount of alcohol as their ancestors did. Both are going to grow. Both are going to change. And each and every person can feel different calling, and they can be separation in families, and they can also be establishment of something that is not necessarily the family unit based. What I did notice is that the distance between the indigenous and the elite is not as great as we think that it is.